Well, let's get a bit more on the vaccine situation now. And confirmation that both government and the Solidarity Fund have missed deadlines to make payments to the International Vaccine Fund, the one known as Covax. The fund is supposed to coordinate efforts to ensure that people in poorer countries have access to a COVID-19 vaccine. You'll know the richer countries have started up buying more doses than they need. The founder of the Health Justice Initiative is Fatima Hassan. She joins us now. Fatima, good afternoon to you. At this stage, do we know why our government and the Solidarity Fund have missed not one but two deadlines to make these payments?
Hi, Stephen. So, I think it would be great if government could share more information and be more timely with that. We've now heard that the deadline has been shifted to the 22nd of December. There's also going to be a briefing by the Minister and the MAC advisory members this evening, where they'll be providing presumably some information about our vaccine access and allocation plans tonight. But I think it's part of what we talked about last week around the way in which the structure of Covax has been established and the deadlines that they basically self-create, which may not be feasible for many developing countries to actually adhere to comply with.
I mean, as far as I know, there's no other international agreement to get vaccines. I mean, Covax is it, isn't it?
So there's Covax, and obviously as a government, you can enter into bilateral agreements with some of these manufacturers, which is what the other richer, wealthier nations did. But you're right, at the moment, Covax is one of the options. It may not be the ideal option, but it certainly is an option. Last night, more commitments were made by some of these companies to commit additional dosages for developing countries, including middle-income countries and low-income countries, to access a small percentage, but at least some supplies, more than they had made available last week. And you know, that was the briefing that was taking place this afternoon by the WHO. So I mean, Covax, with all of its limitations aside and all of its issues around transparency that we as activists have been raising around the pricing issues and the power of the pharmaceutical industry, is at the moment one of the key ways in which a country like South Africa can actually access some dosages of the vaccines that are now approved for use in other parts of the world. And we believe that there's been some information that was shared yesterday and today may actually even be in the pipeline for registration in South Africa.
I mean, if I recall, the payment we had to make was around $320 million, which is, I think might have been rand. It was quite a lot of money. It's rand, thank goodness. Quite a lot of money. I mean, could it just be that we weren't able to get the money together in time?
So, you know, this is again the issue, you know, that we've spoken about before, about not sharing information properly, and so we're all having to speculate. There was eventually a press statement which indicated that some of the PFMA rules precluded basically making a payment to a private supplier. But, you know, there are other countries who made their commitments and who made their payments to Covax, and they made it on time. And so one would have thought that if laws had to be passed and special measures had to have been put in place so that the national treasury actually controls the funds and makes the transfer, that is what would have been done. But instead, it seems we were focusing on passing laws and regulations around beaches and open-toe shoes instead of focusing on the real issues, which is, you know, how do you enable fast expedited payments for limited dosages that are available through Covax or any other mechanism? How do you negotiate bilaterally? And how do you lower the prices of potential vaccine candidates so that you can actually afford more and then scale it up in an equitable way?
Could there be some, I don't know, hard-headed, and I mean that as a compliment in a way, a hard-headed Treasury official who's saying, look, if we now give this money and it ties us in to Covax, it might mean that we have to pay, for argument's sake, 500 rand per dose of the vaccine. And in 2 or 3 months' time, the price could drop quite significantly and suddenly be 50 rand. And yet we would still be tied to the agreement we had signed and have to pay the 500 rand. I mean, could someone be a bit worried about wasting money, that in the end, we might pay more than we should?
Yeah, so I think that's a valid criticism of Covax, which, you know, activists around the world have been sort of arguing that a lot of countries have put money into the mechanism, but we've looked at a list that was mistakenly released by a government official in Belgium yesterday around the prices of the different vaccine products. And it's anything from $2 a dosage to $25 to, in some cases, $35 a dosage. So you don't know what you're necessarily buying, and you don't know why you're paying a particular price. So it very well may be that there is some, government reluctance to actually commit money from the national fiscus for something that is so unpredictable and so speculative. The disadvantage, however, of having the Solidarity Fund, which is regarding itself as a private fund, having to step in to pay that, is it's just so unclear now, Stephen, like who in the Solidarity Fund is going to be making decisions about, which vaccines we're getting. The Minister of Health is not on the board of the Solidarity Fund. The Treasury, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Trade and Industry are. The health stream of the Solidarity Fund or the health working group is chaired by somebody from the private sector, from the private health sector. So, these are all the issues that we've been trying to highlight, to say to government, you need to act with greater sense of urgency in sharing information. You need to take the public into your confidence. We need to be able to ask questions. You as journalists need to be able to have regular daily briefings so that you can ask these questions of government, because at the moment there's so much speculation, there's so much uncertainty, and that fuels misinformation.
The last thing we need during a pandemic is misinformation around vaccines. There is another question, which may be just in a way you've already alluded to it. Could there just be a lack of capacity? I mean, this is all quite complex financial stuff at a time when I imagine every single official in the Department of Health hasn't had a full night's sleep since, the beginning of February. Could there just be a lack of capacity in the health department, maybe even the Treasury?
So look, and again, I'm speculating, but my sense of what has happened with the hollowing out of many of our state departments and institutions over the last few years is that, it's all having an impact on our ability to respond to this pandemic meaningfully. But the issue really is that in this current disaster, it's, COGTA, the National Department of Health, and the Disaster Management Center can actually all pull their resources together, and in fact, by law should. So it really doesn't have to be only on the shoulders of a few officials in the Department of Health or in National Treasury. I mean, there's a whole MAC, there's a Ministerial Advisory Committee with like some of the country and the world's leading experts on this. They certainly, we know, have been making recommendations and giving advice. We haven't seen those, we'd like to, in the interest of transparency. So there certainly is a lot of goodwill and capacity and resources in South Africa. The question is somebody, harnessing that, and is that being used in the most constructive way, where government officials have to actually in this pandemic be less defensive, take all the help they can, but still maintain and exercise control. After all, they are the national government. They are the elected officials. They are responsible for how we manage this pandemic. The Solidarity Fund isn't. We certainly can't hold them to account, and nor can we hold Covax to account. We have no enforceable guarantees against them. So yeah, I think your point is an important one, and I think the answers are so complex. But we'd certainly like to see the Minister of Health showing a bit more, leadership in terms of sharing information on these issues, not just on the issues around, the numbers and the number of recoveries and the number of deaths in our country.
Well, we expect the Minister, as you say, to be part of that briefing. We'll take it live here at 6 o'clock, all things being equal. Fatima Hassan, thank you.